Shiro wakes up confused in the district of Akihabara in the Elder Tales video game. He meets other panicked players while wearing his in-game character, and they all find themselves unable to log out. Shiro quickly contacts his friend Nayatsugu and then the assassin Akatsuki through his game menu. The next day, the trio meets with Marielle of the Crescent Moon Alliance Guild to learn that all of the Japanese game district's teleportation gates have been turned off, as well as the start of a widespread guild recruitment campaign to deal with the changes brought on by the recent update. Shiro then discusses the ramifications of an in-game death before heading into the Archive Tower Forest, where they are ambushed by a pack of briar weasels. They are able to overcome the ambush after some initial difficulty by physically moving their bodies to attack rather than relying on their preset attack commands. A mysterious figure watches, a girl named Sarara, who is being pursued by two players, makes a panicked call to Marielle. Shiro deduces that the game does not end when a player is revived at the cathedral. Shiro and her companions return to the Crescent Moon Alliance after another meeting. They learn about the recent spike in Akihabara player murders. Shiro and Nayatsugu anticipate an ambush from nearby players and force them into a direct confrontation. After a day of training, overconfidence quickly becomes the ambushed party's undoing as Shiro and Nayatsugu's teamwork proves far too much for them, and they are quickly overwhelmed by the latter's high-level combinations. In a desperate attempt to summon reinforcements, the ambush leader discovers that they have already been dispatched by Akatsuki. The leader, feigning defeat, attacks Shiro until Akatsuki kills him. Shiro deduces that the string of killings was purely for entertainment purposes because people can survive in-game without actually doing anything. Following that, Shiro receives a call from Marielle who informs her that she plans to send a rescue party to Suzukino to retrieve Sarara and asks Shiro to look after the guild while she is gone. Shiro and his friends, on the other hand, decide to accompany Marielle. When they reach a dungeon known as the Depths of Palm on their way to Suzukino, they surprise Marielle with how far they've come. Meanwhile, Sarara appears to be doing well in the care of Nyanta, a cat player who rescued her from her pursuers. The Brigandia Guild continues to pillage and loot the district while they wonder what happened to the people Marielle sent. Meanwhile, Marielle convenes a meeting with Akihabara's smaller guilds, and another mysterious guild master becomes aware of the recent events. Shiro and her companions have been seen elsewhere. Shiro tries to cross an ancient bridge in the dungeon, but it suddenly collapses, sending her plummeting into the lake below. Shiro regains consciousness after recalling his time with the debauchery tea party, only to discover that he has been saved by his companions. Shiro and the others eventually succeed. They are confronted by the dungeon's boss, a new Nova Sphere Pioneers creature. They arrive at the exit after winning and are rewarded with a breathtaking view of the sunset over the channel. In other news, Reganius Guild Master Demuquiz has issued a manhunt for Sarara and Nyanta. Shiro finally arrives in Suzukino and enters the district, wary of a Brigandia ambush. Shiro meets up with Sarara and Nyanta in a secret location and learns that it was his old friend Nyanta who had been protecting Sarara. Shiro then devises a strategy for leaving the district. Shiro, Nyanta, and Sarara are surrounded by the Brigandia Guild after patiently waiting for them to leave the district, and Shiro turns Demuquiz into a duel with Nyanta. Demuquiz calls in his guild members for help, but Nayatsugu quickly intercepts them due to Nyanta's swashbuckler subclass inflicting severe status ailments on him. Shiro has Sarara heal both Nitsugu and Nyanta when their health begins to deteriorate. Because the healing appears to be ineffective, Nayatsugu forces the Brigandia members to concentrate on him, buying enough time for Shiro to ensnare Demuquiz and defeat him while taking out Brigandia's remaining healers. Akatsuki admires their incredible teamwork, with Sarara delivering the final blow to Demuquiz. In order to protect Shiro, Nayatsugu, and Nyanta summon 3 griffins and return to Akihabara after completing their mission. Shiro and her friends successfully escape Suzukino and set up camp. During their break, Nyanta takes advantage of the opportunity to brag about his culinary skills, explaining that only those with the chef subclass can manually prepare flavorful food. Following that, Nayanta, Shiro, and Naotsubu explain their past as members of the legendary adventuring group Debauchery Tea Party, which makes Akatsuki lament her own abilities. Shiro reflects on his time mentoring two beginners, Toya and Minori, and recalls seeing them join a guild back in Akihabara. A sudden thunderstorm forces the party to seek shelter in a nearby farming village the next day, where they meet Fedor, a lander. Shiro observes that the Elder Tales world's native inhabitants have more human characteristics than is given credit for, and that the adventurers are, in fact, the world's anomalies. After interacting with Fedor and his grandchildren Toya and Minori, as well as other newcomers, they are taken advantage of by the guild that entice them into joining. Finally, Toya and the rest of his guild notice Shiro and company as they leave the next day. He safely returns to Akihabara, but he's hesitant to meet him. To celebrate Sarara's return, the Crescent Moon Alliance throws a party and decides to keep Nyanta's cooking methods hidden from the rest of the city. Following that, Marielle explains that during Shiro's absence, the citizens felt uneasy, and a social divide developed between the strong and weak guilds. The guilds have been leveling up using items obtained from the Heinlein Guild, who had been recruiting low-level players for the sole purpose of creating a monopoly on their exclusive items. Since the player level limit was raised to 100 following the Nova Sphere Pioneers update, Shiro later ponders all of his self-imposed limitations in the aftermath of this news. Nyanta helps him realize that he had been using them as an excuse to deliberately blind himself to the reality of Akihabara's true state despite his friend's presence. Shiro then calls Minori and learns as much as he can about their predicament before promising to save them. The next day, Shiro asks the Crescent Moon Alliance for assistance in putting an end to Hangman's plot and restoring Akihabara's goodwill with his newly formed guild, Log Horizon. While the rest of the Crescent Moon Alliance and Nyanta begin preparing for Shiro's plan, Naotsubu, Shoryu, and Hine begin hunting ingredient monsters. At the same time, Henrietta and Shiro assign Marielle the task of approving a massive budget for Shiro's scheme, which necessitates 5 million gold funding requests. By exploiting the fact that Elder Tales has no strict rules about how currency should be obtained, Crescent Moon Alliance opens a food booth the next day. Despite the citizens' initial reluctance, it becomes an instant hit, with word of their flavorful food quickly spreading throughout the city. Despite the fact that their sales are limited by the total number of citizens living in Akihabara and the total number of people they can serve daily, the stall manages to make a profit of over 40,000 gold. Shiro then tells Henrietta about the next stage of his plan before informing Minori of their progress and urging her to wait a little longer. Shiro and Nyanta seek the help of Sajiro Theta, a former Debauchery Tea Party member and master of the Brigade of the West Wind Guild, who gladly assists his old friends. Shiro begins the second stage of his plan the next day. Marielle and Henrietta meet with Kurishin, the master of the Shopping Street 8 Guild, to discuss a trade agreement for Shiro's plan's second stage. In his attempt to secure an exclusive deal with the Crescent Moon Alliance's food business, Kurishin tries to be evasive. Shiro has Marielle and Henrietta announce their intention to bring in the masters of the other business venturing guilds, Mishitaka of the Marine Agency and Roderick of the Roderick Merchant Guild, respectively. This forces Kurishin to accept the alliance's offer at a significantly reduced price. In the meantime, Minori laments the difficulties she and Toya faced when they became trapped within Elder Tales, as well as the fact that they didn't listen to Shiro's advice before it was too late, making them unworthy of his rescue. Back at the meeting, Shiro has Henrietta dupe the 3 guild masters into investing the last of their gold in an extremely profitable quest led by none other than Shiro, the villain in glasses. Before the Crescent Moon Alliance and Log Horizon invite Akihabara's largest guilds to a conference to discuss the city's future, Toya expresses similar feelings of undeserved rescue to Minori. Shiro begins the round table conference by stating his desire to improve the city's living conditions. William Massachusetts, the guild master of Silver Sword, quickly loses interest and leaves. Shiro continues unfazed with his explanation of the conference's formation. Shiro mentions the item extortion campaign and Suzukino's dire state as the Heinlein captives prepare to flee with Isaac, the guildmaster of the Black Sword Knights, arguing the lack of laws in the world. Krusty, the DDD guild master, asks about the fate of the guild that refuses to obey laws, to which Shiro proposes harsh punishment. However, Honesty's guild master, Heinz, as well as Isaac and Krusty, argue about the flaw in the conference if they refuse to cooperate with Isaac threatening war. Shiro then plays his trump card, revealing his 5 million gold purchase of the guild building and counter-blackmailing the guilds over his complete control of their affairs. Unfortunately, Minori and Toya are captured by Traitor as the captives manage to escape the Heinlein Hall. Shiro's control of the guild building, combined with the assistance of his friends, allows him to successfully blacklist all of Heinlein's members. Finally, Isaac demands Shiro's plan as he makes one last pitch to the conference. As the conference progresses, Marielle reveals the secret to flavorful food preparation, followed by Mishitaka's announcement of a collaborative steam engine invention. With these examples, Shiro demonstrates how new things can be invented simply by using one's hands rather than the command menu, resulting in increased demand for items and thus driving Akihabara's economy. Shiro then proposes the establishment of laws prohibiting the killing, kidnapping, and imprisonment of players, as well as allowing them to freely join and leave guilds, much to the surprise of the conference. He also suggests that these laws apply to the landers. Shiro, on the other hand, persuades the conference of the people's importance and the urgent need to coexist peacefully with them. With Marielle's help, the guildmasters unanimously decide to form the Round Table after being presented with an undeniable case and proceed to inform the city and celebrate the occasion. Shiro secures a headquarters for Log Horizon. A week later, Toya and Minori are welcomed as new members. Spies infiltrate Akihabara at the same time, reporting to Sergiat Cohen of the League of Freedom Cities of Estol. While hunting, two land people notice a strange phenomenon over the forest. Meanwhile, Toya and Minori are taken under the wing of Nayatsubu and Akatsuki for training. Marielle develops a strong desire to visit the beach as Shiro begins to experiment with his scribe subclass. This inspires Shiro to organize a new player training camp in the summer. Sergiat's emissaries arrive in Akihabara after that and invite the Round Table to a meeting in Ball. Shiro informs Krusty of the opportunity to learn more about the landers, and the four of them set out the following month with Mishitaka, Henrietta, Akatsuki, and Misataka Ayama. The training camp also traveled to Chochi, where they spent time at the beach as suggested by Shiro. Marielle and Minori interact with more persons of the land. The Round Table representatives arrive at the Palace of Eternal Ice during the ball and meet with Sergiat. Shiro observes that both the adventurers and the landers are wary of each other as Krusty and Sergei begin their conversation. Finally, as Princess Lanisha Lar Cohen races the dance, Nayatsubu informs the trainees that they will be heading into the Forest of Log Land dungeon the next day for group training. Sergiat invites the Round Table representatives to dance, prompting Krusty to nominate Shiro, who quickly impresses the entire ball with the help of Henrietta's Bard subclass. Minori then tells Shiro about their dungeon training and reminds her of his lessons. Shiro explains the next day that the landers would compete with one another over dealings with adventurers in order to gain their fighting and technological power. He then suggests that they make rules to protect the Round Table when the people begin approaching their guilds one by one, and as Akatsuki begins reconnaissance. As a result, in other news, the training camp heads to the Forest of Legland and divides into groups, but Minori has trouble speaking up in a group that includes Toya, Rundlehouse Azuzu, and Sarara. The group eventually encounters some monsters and becomes acquainted with their abilities. Despite their best efforts, they are quickly overwhelmed by the next wave of monsters and are forced to retreat tactically. Krusty greets Lanisha when they return to the Palace of Eternal Ice. Watch this next video.